Tighten the cuffs, Dad. She needs to feel it. Tyler Garrett's voice dripped with cruel satisfaction as he watched his father yank the 17-year-old girl's arms behind her back. Officer Marcus Garrett twisted the metal restraints until Zara Mitchell gasped in pain, her wrists burning as the steel bit deep into her skin. You people need to learn your place. Tyler sneered, stepping closer to her face. This isn't your neighborhood, and it never will be. Dozens of phones recorded the scene. Students watched in horror. Teachers stood frozen, afraid to intervene. And Zara, the new black girl who'd been at Westbrook High for barely 3 weeks, was being hauled away in handcuffs for a crime she didn't commit. What Tyler didn't know, what his corrupt cop father couldn't possibly imagine, was that they had just made the worst mistake of their lives. Because Zara Mitchell wasn't just any student. She was the daughter of State Judge Victoria Mitchell, the most feared woman in the Georgia justice system. Before we continue, I want to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments below and make sure to subscribe, because this story is about to get intense. Stay with me until the end. You won't believe what happens next. 3 weeks earlier, Zara Mitchell took her first step into Westbrook High School. Her mother had just dropped her off with a quick kiss and the same words she always said. Remember who you are, baby. Head high. Always. Zara pushed through the front doors and felt the stares immediately. Students turned mid-conversation. Whispers spread like wildfire. A group of girls near the water fountain stopped talking and watched her pass with expressions that weren't quite hostile, but weren't friendly either. She'd done this before. New schools. New faces. New judgment. Room 237. AP Literature. She checked the numbers as she walked. 231. 233. 235. She never saw him coming. The impact knocked her sideways. Her books flew from her arms and scattered across the floor. Papers floated down around her like wounded birds. Watch where you're going. Zara looked up at a tall senior in a Letterman jacket. 4 other boys in matching jackets flanked him, forming a wall of hostility. The leader stood with his arms crossed, a cruel smile twisting his lips. She recognized the type immediately. Every school had one. Zara knelt and began gathering her things. You bumped into me on purpose. The smile vanished from his face. Excuse me, did you just talk back to me? I said what I said. Someone in the crowd whispered, Oh my God, she doesn't know who he is. The boy stepped forward, his shadow falling over her. Looks like somebody doesn't know their place around here. He kicked her notebook down the hall. This isn't your neighborhood, princess. Westbrook has standards. Zara stood slowly. Her heart was pounding, but she kept her face calm. Pick up my notebook. His eyes widened. Behind him, his friends exchanged shocked glances. What did you just say to me? You kicked it. Pick it up. The boy laughed, but there was no humor in it. Do you have any idea who I am? I'm Tyler Garrett. My father is Officer Marcus Garrett. My grandfather was sheriff of this county for 30 years. He invaded her space close enough that she could smell his cologne. My family runs this town, and you're nobody. Zara didn't step back. Your family name doesn't give you the right to assault people in hallways. Assault? Tyler's face flushed crimson. I barely touched you. You deliberately knocked my books out of my hands. That's assault. She pulled out her phone and hit record. And if you don't back off right now, I'm going to document everything. Tyler's expression shifted when he spotted the camera. His jaw tightened. Several other students had their phones out now too. You're filming me. Are you serious right now? I'm protecting myself. The evidence speaks for itself. You're going to regret this. He jabbed a finger toward her face. By the end of the day, you're going to wish you never set foot in this school. Zara lowered her phone but kept it ready. I know exactly who I'm dealing with. A coward who relies on intimidation because he has nothing else to offer. The words hit him like a slap. His hands balled into fists. For a terrifying second, Zara thought he might actually swing at her. The bell rang. Tyler's friends tugged at his arm. Students scattered toward their classes. But Tyler didn't move. He stared at Zara with pure hatred burning in his eyes. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "Not even close." He stormed away, shoving a freshman into the lockers as he passed. Zara's hands were shaking as she gathered the rest of her papers. A sophomore boy handed her the kicked notebook. "That was incredible," he whispered. "But you need to be careful. Tyler's dangerous. His dad arrests anyone who crosses him." "Thanks for the warning." She walked to room 237 with her head high, but her mind was racing. Bullies with badges. This was new territory. She needed to call her mother. The morning crawled by in a haze of introductions and hostile glances. Word of the hallway confrontation had spread through the school like poison. Students who seemed friendly at first quickly cooled when they realized who she'd challenged. During second period chemistry, Zara felt someone's eyes boring into the back of her head. She turned and caught a blonde girl staring at her with undisguised contempt. "Can I help you?" Zara asked. The girl smirked. "Tyler's my boyfriend. You made a big mistake this morning." "Your boyfriend made a mistake when he decided to bully me." "Bully you?" The girl laughed. "Honey, you haven't seen bullying yet, but you will." The teacher called for attention and the girl turned around, but Zara could feel the threat hanging in the air like smoke. At lunch, she sat alone at a corner table. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "How's your first day going, baby?" Zara hesitated. Her mom was in the middle of a major corruption case. The last thing she needed was more stress. "Good. Making friends." She put her phone away and picked at her salad, trying to ignore the whispers from nearby tables. "That's her. The one who stood up to Tyler. She's dead. Doesn't she know what happened to Marcus Chen? I heard his dad planted drugs in someone's car just for looking at Tyler wrong." Zara filed every word away. A tray clattered down across from her. She looked up to find a girl with glasses and a nervous expression sliding into the seat. "I'm Mia Rodriguez, junior class president." The girl glanced around like she was being watched. "Look, I saw what happened this morning. What you did took guts, but you have no idea what you're dealing with." "Then tell me." Mia leaned closer and lowered her voice. "Last year, there was a kid named Marcus Chen. Smart kid. Quiet. He accidentally bumped into Tyler in the gym. Didn't say anything rude, didn't even look at him wrong. Just bumped into him." "What happened?" 2 days later, Marcus's locker was destroyed. Someone poured red paint all over his clothes and books. A week after that, his car was keyed so bad his parents had to junk it. Then the rumors started. Someone said he was dealing drugs at school. Zara's stomach tightened. "Was he?" "Of course not, but it didn't matter. Officer Garrett showed up at his house with a search warrant. They found a bag of pills in Marcus's backpack." Mia's voice dropped even lower. "Marcus swore they weren't his. He said someone must have planted them. But who was going to believe him over a cop?" "What happened to him?" "Expelled. His family moved to another state before the charges went through. I heard his mom had a nervous breakdown." Mia's eyes were wet. "Marcus was my friend Zara. He was a good person, and they destroyed him because he bumped into Tyler Garrett in a gym." Zara felt cold anger spreading through her chest. "And nobody did anything. Nobody spoke up. Who could we tell Tyler's dad is the one who planted the evidence? His grandfather still has connections in every department in this county. Half the teachers are scared of the family, and the other half just don't want to get involved. That's not justice. That's tyranny." Mia laughed bitterly. "Welcome to Westbrook." The bell rang. Mia stood up quickly, but before she left, she grabbed Zara's hand. "Please be careful. I can't watch them destroy another good person." After lunch, Zara headed to her locker to grab her chemistry textbook. She noticed something wrong immediately. Deep scratches surrounded the lock. When she tried her combination, the mechanism jammed. She photographed the damage. "Having trouble. Zara turned to find Tyler leaning against the opposite wall. His arms crossed, his expression smug. "Someone messed with my lock," she said. "That's terrible. You should report it to the office." He pushed off the wall and walked toward her slowly. "Oh, wait. The office doesn't care about people like you. Nobody here does." "People like me." Tyler stopped inches from her face. "You know exactly what I mean." "Say it." "What?" "If you're going to be racist, at least have the guts to say it out loud. Let everyone hear what you really are." Tyler's face twisted with rage. For a moment, Zara thought he was going to hit her right there in the hallway. But then he smiled, a cold, calculated expression that was somehow worse than anger. "You think you're so smart," he said quietly. "You think that phone and those videos are going to protect you. But let me tell you something, Princess. My family has been running this town for 3 generations. We decide who succeeds and who fails, who stays and who disappears." He leaned even closer. His breath was hot on her face. "Marcus Chen thought he could ignore us too. You saw how that turned out. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to delete those videos. You're going to apologize to me in front of the whole school, and then you're going to spend the rest of your time at Westbrook keeping your head down and your mouth shut." "And if I don't?" Tyler straightened up, still smiling. "Then I'm going to show you exactly what happens to people who don't know their place." He walked away, whistling. Zara stood alone in the hallway, her heart pounding. She looked down at her damaged locker, then at her phone with its folder full of evidence. She texted her mother. "We need to talk tonight. It's important." That evening, Victoria Mitchell listened in silence as Zara recounted everything. The confrontation, the threats, Marcus Chen's story, the vandalized locker. When Zara finished, her mother sat very still for a long moment. "Tyler Garrett," Victoria said slowly. "His father is Marcus Garrett." "Yes." "And his grandfather is William Garrett, the former sheriff." "That's what Tyler said." Victoria's jaw tightened. "I know William Garrett. He retired before I took the bench, but his reputation was well known. There were accusations, Zara, misconduct, abuse of power, evidence tampering. Nothing was ever proven because witnesses kept recanting or disappearing." "Mom, what should I do?" Victoria reached across the table and took her daughter's hands. "You do exactly what you did today. You document everything. You stand your ground. You don't let them intimidate you into silence." Her grip tightened. "But you also tell me immediately if things escalate. Do you understand immediately?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good." Victoria's expression softened slightly. "I'm proud of you, baby. You handled yourself with dignity today. That takes real courage. I learned from the best." That night, Zara couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Marcus Chen. A good kid. Quiet. Destroyed because he bumped into the wrong person. His whole future erased because one family decided they were above the law. How many others had there been? How many students had Tyler tormented while teachers looked the other way? How many people had Officer Garrett threatened or framed while his colleagues stayed silent? Zara made a decision in the darkness of her bedroom. She wasn't going to be the next Marcus Chen. She was going to be the one who finally stopped them. The next morning, Zara arrived at school early. She wanted to get to her locker before the halls got crowded. But Tyler was already there waiting, flanked by his usual crew. "Well, well," he said. "Didn't expect to see you again." "Why?" "Because you thought I'd run away like Marcus Chen." Tyler's eyes narrowed. "Who told you about that?" "Does it matter? I know what you did to him. I know what your father did. And I'm not going to let you do it to anyone else." One of Tyler's friends laughed nervously. "She's crazy, man. Let's just go." But Tyler didn't move. He stared at Zara with something new in his expression. Not just anger. Fear. "You need to be very careful about the accusations you make," he said quietly. "They're not accusations. They're facts. And I'm going to prove every single one of them." She pushed past him and walked to her locker. Behind her, she heard Tyler's voice, low and dangerous. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." The harassment escalated immediately. During first period, someone slipped a note into Zara's textbook. She unfolded it and found a crude drawing of a girl hanging from a tree with the words, "Go back to where you came from," scrawled beneath it. She photographed it and added it to her evidence folder. In the hallway between classes, someone shoved her from behind. She stumbled, but didn't fall. When she turned around, there was no one there, just a crowd of students who suddenly seemed very interested in their phones. During lunch, she found Mia sitting alone at their usual table, her face pale. "What's wrong?" Mia handed over her phone with shaking hands. "Look." It was a group chat. Someone had posted a message. "Anyone seen talking to the new girl gets the same treatment she's getting. You've been warned." Zara felt her stomach drop. "I'm so sorry, Mia. I never meant to put you in danger." "It's not your fault." Mia took her phone back. "I'm just scared. I've seen what they can do." "Then don't sit with me anymore. I understand." Mia looked up, her eyes filling with tears. "That's the thing, Zara. I'm scared. But I'm also tired of being scared. I'm tired of watching them hurt people while the rest of us stay silent." She reached across the table and grabbed Zara's hand. "I'm not going anywhere." For the first time since arriving at Westbrook, Zara felt something other than dread. She felt hope. Over the next 2 weeks, the harassment continued without mercy. Someone scratched the word "leave" into the paint of her locker. Her gym clothes were stolen and found stuffed in a toilet. Anonymous accounts sent her death threats on social media. Twice, she found her car tires slashed in the school parking lot. But Zara documented everything. Every incident, every threat, every suspicious accident. And slowly, other students began to speak up. A sophomore named David approached her after school one day. "Tyler pushed me down the stairs last year," he said quietly. "Told everyone I tripped. I'll give you a written statement if you want." A junior girl named Aisha shared screenshots of threatening messages Tyler had sent her after she rejected his advances. "I was too scared to report it before. But if you're building a case, I want to help." A teacher's aide named Mr. Patterson pulled Zara aside during study hall. "I've seen things," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Things I should have reported years ago. I'm willing to testify if it comes to that." The evidence folder grew thicker every day. Then, on a Wednesday morning, Zara arrived at school to find a crowd gathered near the main entrance. "What's going on?" she asked a freshman. The boy's face went white when he saw her. "You should probably see for yourself." Zara pushed through the crowd and stopped dead. Her locker had been destroyed, not just vandalized, destroyed. The door was dented and hanging off its hinges. Inside, all her belongings had been doused in something that smelled like gasoline. And spray-painted across the metal in huge black letters were words so hateful that several younger students turned away in shock. Racial slurs, threats. A message that left no room for interpretation: burn in hell. The hallway fell silent as Zara approached. She pulled out her phone and began photographing the damage, her hands steady, even as her heart raced. "Ms. Mitchell." Principal Hayes appeared looking flustered. "I'm so sorry about this. We'll have it cleaned up immediately." "Have you checked the security cameras?" Hayes shifted uncomfortably. "Unfortunately, the cameras in this section have been experiencing technical difficulties. Let me guess, since yesterday." Yes." Zara turned to face him, her voice carrying across the silent hallway. "Principal Hayes, I've been at this school for 2 weeks. In that time, I've been physically assaulted, verbally, harassed, received death threats, had my property destroyed, and now I'm looking at hate speech that would make the Klan proud. I've reported every single incident. I've provided documentation. And what has this administration done?" Hayes opened his mouth, but no words came out. "Nothing," Zara continued. "You've done nothing. And now I'm standing in front of a locker that someone doused with gasoline, and you're telling me the cameras just happened to malfunction. She stepped closer to him. I'm not stupid, Principal Hayes, and neither is anyone else in this hallway. Students were filming. Teachers had emerged from classrooms. The entire school seemed to be watching. I've documented everything, Zara said, her voice rising. Every threat, every incident, every time someone in authority chose to look the other way. And I'm telling you right now, if this school doesn't start protecting its students, I will find someone who will. She turned and walked away, leaving Hayes sputtering behind her. That afternoon, Mia found her in the library staring at her evidence folder. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen, Mia said, sliding into the seat across from her. I'm not brave. I'm just tired. Tired of what? Tired of being afraid. Tired of watching people like Tyler get away with everything. Tired of pretending that if we just keep our heads down and stay quiet, everything will be okay. Zara looked up. It won't be okay, Mia. Not unless someone does something. What are you going to do? Zara pulled out a thick folder and slid it across the table. Inside were photographs, screenshots, witness statements, and a detailed timeline of every incident since her first day at Westbrook. I'm going to take them down, she said. Tyler, his father, his grandfather, all of them. I'm going to expose exactly what they've been doing to students at this school for years. Mia stared at the folder. This is incredible. But Zara, these people are dangerous. If they find out what you're planning, they already know. That's why they destroyed my locker. Zara's jaw tightened. They're trying to scare me into silence, but I'm not Marcus Chen. I'm not going to run away. I'm going to fight. Mia was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled out her own phone and opened a notes app. I've been keeping records too, she said quietly. Everything I saw them do to Marcus. Things I've witnessed over the years that I was too scared to report. She looked up, her eyes fierce. If you're building a case, I want in. Zara felt tears prick at her eyes. Are you sure this could destroy your life? My life isn't worth much if I spend it being a coward. Mia reached across the table and squeezed her hand. We're in this together, whatever happens. The following Monday, everything changed. Zara was heading to the courtyard for lunch when Tyler stepped into her path. He was alone this time, his usual smirk gone, replaced by something dark and desperate. You think you're winning, don't you? His voice was low and threatening. Going around collecting your little statements, building your pathetic case. Zara stopped. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play dumb with me. Tyler moved closer. I know everything. I know about the folder. I know about the witnesses. I know you've been talking to people who should know better than to cross my family. If you know so much, then you know you can't stop what's coming. Tyler's face contorted with rage. My father is a cop. My grandfather ran this county for 30 years. Do you really think some folder full of accusations is going to bring us down? They're not accusations, Tyler. They're evidence. And there's more of it every day. You stupid little... He caught himself taking a deep breath. When he spoke again, his voice was ice cold. I gave you chances. I warned you what would happen. But you just couldn't learn your lesson, could you? He pulled out his phone and smiled. What are you doing? What I should have done the first day you walked into this school. He knocked her lunch tray from her hands. Food splattered across the concrete. Her water bottle burst open, spraying across her shoes. Then Tyler clutched his arm and stumbled backward, his face twisting into an expression of pain. Did you see that? He shouted to the gathering crowd. She attacked me. She tried to hit me. Zara's blood ran cold. What are you talking about? Everyone saw you assault me. Tyler was already dialing his voice, trembling with fake distress. Dad, you need to come to school right now. That girl I told you about? She just attacked me with her lunch tray. I think I'm hurt. That's a lie, Zara shouted, but her voice was drowned out by the chaos. Hurry, Dad. Tyler continued, his eyes locked on Zara with vicious triumph. She's threatening me right now. I don't feel safe. In the distance, Zara heard it. Sirens, growing louder by the second. She pulled out her phone and began recording. Tyler Garrett just knocked my lunch tray from my hands and is now making false accusations. He has called his father, Officer Marcus Garrett, to arrest me on fake charges. I am not resisting. I have not attacked anyone. Multiple students are recording this incident. Tyler pocketed his phone, his smirk returning. You should have known your place, he said quietly, stepping close enough that only she could hear. Now you're going to find out what happens to people who think they can stand up to us, just like Marcus Chen, just like everyone else who was stupid enough to try. The sirens screamed closer. Students pulled out their phones. Teachers emerged from buildings. But no one moved to help. I'm not Marcus Chen, Zara said, her voice steady, despite the terror coursing through her. And this isn't going to end the way you think it will. Tyler laughed. You're about to be arrested by my father for assaulting the son of a police officer. Your life is over. Your mother's career is over. Everything you have is about to be destroyed. My mother's career. Oh, didn't I mention, we know exactly who your mother is, Ms. Mitchell. Judge Victoria Mitchell. We've known since the day you enrolled. Tyler's smile widened. Did you really think we didn't do our research? We've been waiting for the right moment to take you both down. And thanks to your stupidity today, you just gave us everything we needed. Zara's heart stopped. They knew. They'd known all along. This wasn't just about bullying anymore. This was a coordinated attack on her entire family. The school doors burst open. Officer Marcus Garrett stormed through, his hand on his weapon, his face twisted with righteous fury. He was bigger than Zara had imagined, 6'4" at least, with shoulders like a linebacker and eyes that held no mercy. Where is she? He bellowed. Where's the girl who attacked my son? Right here, Dad! Tyler pointed at Zara, still clutching his arm in fake pain. She hit me with her tray and then threatened to kill me. Marcus Garrett locked eyes with Zara. A cold smile spread across his face. Well, he said, walking toward her slowly, deliberately. So you're the one who's been causing all this trouble. Officer, I didn't. Shut your mouth. He grabbed her arm hard enough to bruise. You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it. This is a false arrest. There are dozens of witnesses. I said, shut up. He spun her around and yanked her arms behind her back. The handcuffs clicked shut too tight, cutting into her wrists. You're hurting me. Resisting arrest, Marcus said loudly for the benefit of the watching crowd. Add it to the charges. I'm not resisting. I'm standing still. Tighten the cuffs, Dad. Tyler's voice cut through the chaos, dripping with satisfaction. She needs to feel it. Marcus twisted the restraints until Zara cried out in pain. You people need to learn your place. Tyler sneered, stepping close to her face. This isn't your neighborhood, and it never will be. Zara's vision blurred with tears, not from fear, but from rage. Dozens of phones were recording. Teachers stood frozen, too scared to intervene. Students watched in horror as she was dragged toward the parking lot. You have no idea what you've just done, she said quietly. Marcus laughed. I know exactly what I've done. I've removed a troublemaker from a school where she doesn't belong. My mother is going to destroy you. Your mother. Marcus leaned close, his breath hot on her face. Judge Victoria Mitchell. We know all about her. And by the time we're done, she won't be a judge anymore. She'll be lucky if she's not disbarred. He shoved her into the back of his squad car and slammed the door. Through the window, Zara could see Tyler waving mockingly, his phone raised, recording her humiliation. Behind him, students stood in stunned silence, their own phones documenting the moment a cop arrested an innocent girl for a crime that never happened. Marcus climbed into the driver's seat and adjusted his mirror to glare at her. Think you're clever causing trouble at school? We'll see how smart you feel after a night in holding. I know my rights, Zara replied, her voice steady despite everything. And I know that every second of this illegal arrest is being documented. Documented by who? Your little friends with their phones. Marcus laughed. By tomorrow, all those videos will be gone. And everyone who saw what happened will suddenly develop amnesia. That's how things work around here, sweetheart. That's how they've always worked. He pulled away from the curb. Zara watched the school shrink in the distance. Her wrists throbbed. Her shoulders ached from the awkward position. But her mind was already racing. They'd made a mistake. A fatal one. They thought they knew who her mother was. They thought they could destroy her the way they'd destroyed Marcus Chen and everyone else who'd ever stood up to them. But they didn't know Victoria Mitchell. Not really. And by the time they figured it out, it would be far too late. At the police station, Marcus yanked her from the car and marched her inside. Other officers barely glanced up from their desks. This was routine for them. Another troublemaker being taught a lesson. Marcus shoved her into a plastic chair next to his desk. Sit. Don't move. He dropped into his own chair and pulled out an arrest form, filling in the details with angry strokes. Name, age, school. Then he reached the line for parent-guardian information. His pen hovered over the paper. He read her last name again, Mitchell. Something flickered across his face. A shadow of doubt. A young officer appeared at his desk, face tight with concern. "Sir, I need to speak with you privately." "Not now, Turner. I'm processing an arrest." "Sir, it's urgent." The officer leaned close and whispered something in Marcus's ear. The color drained from Marcus Garrett's face. "What did you say?" "Judge Mitchell is on her way. That's her daughter you just arrested." Officer Turner swallowed hard. "She'll be here in 10 minutes. And sir, she's furious." The pen slipped from Marcus's fingers and clattered onto his desk. Zara watched the panic spread across his face. Watched him look down at the arrest form, then back up at her, then at the handcuffs still biting into her wrists. She met his terrified gaze and smiled. "I told you that you had no idea what you'd done." The station fell silent. Marcus Garrett sat frozen behind his desk, staring at Zara like he was seeing her for the first time. His confident sneer had vanished, replaced by something that looked almost like fear. "You're lying," he said, but his voice cracked. "Am I?" Zara kept her expression calm, despite the pain in her wrists. "Call the courthouse. Ask for Judge Victoria Mitchell's office. Tell them you have her daughter in handcuffs for a crime she didn't commit." Marcus grabbed the arrest form and crumpled it in his fist. He turned to Officer Turner, who was still standing by the desk with a pale face. "Get the captain. Now." Turner practically ran down the hallway. Marcus stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. He paced back and forth, running his hands through his hair. Other officers had stopped what they were doing. The station buzzed with whispered conversations. "She's bluffing," Marcus muttered to himself. "She has to be bluffing." "I've never lied about who I am," Zara said. "You just never bothered to ask." "Shut up." Marcus pointed a finger at her. "You don't talk unless I tell you to talk." "That's not how constitutional rights work, Officer Garrett. But I'm not surprised you don't know that." Marcus's face turned crimson. He took a step toward her, his hand raised like he was going to strike her. But before he could move, the station doors burst open with such force that they slammed against the walls. Victoria Mitchell walked in like a hurricane in heels. She wore a charcoal gray suit that radiated authority. Her silver earrings caught the fluorescent light. But it was her eyes that stopped everyone, cold, dark, fierce, burning with a fury that made hardened officers step back. "Where is my daughter?" Her voice carried through the entire station. Not loud, not hysterical. Just cold, controlled, deadly. Marcus stood paralyzed. Victoria spotted Zara in the plastic chair wrists, still bound behind her back, and something in her expression shifted. The anger crystallized into something far more dangerous. She crossed the station in 5 steps, her heels clicking like gunshots against the tile floor. Officers scrambled out of her path. She knelt in front of Zara and examined her face, her wrists, the red marks where the handcuffs had cut into skin. "Are you hurt?" "I'm okay, Mom." "The cuffs are too tight. I can see the bruising already." Victoria stood and turned to face Marcus, who looked like he wanted to disappear through the floor. "Remove those handcuffs, now." "Judge Mitchell, I can explain." "I didn't ask for an explanation. I said remove the handcuffs." Marcus didn't move. His eyes darted around the room looking for support from his fellow officers. Nobody met his gaze. "Officer Turner?" Victoria's voice cut through the silence. "Remove my daughter's handcuffs immediately." Turner stepped forward, hands shaking as he fumbled with his keys. The cuffs clicked open. Zara brought her arms forward, slowly wincing as blood rushed back into her hands. The angry red marks circled her wrists like bracelets of accusation. Victoria photographed them with her phone. "Mom, tell me everything that happened, from the beginning." Zara recounted the events in clear, precise terms. The staged confrontation in the courtyard, Tyler knocking her tray from her hands, his fake claim of assault, Marcus storming into the school without checking in at the office, the excessive force, the threats. "Multiple students recorded the incident," Zara finished. "There are probably dozens of videos by now." Victoria turned to Marcus. Her expression was absolutely terrifying in its calmness. "Officer Garrett, on what basis did you arrest my daughter?" "I received a call that she had assaulted." "A call from whom?" "My son." "Your son." Victoria let the words hang in the air. "So, your son called you to report that he had been assaulted, and you, his father, a police officer, responded personally to arrest the alleged perpetrator. Is that correct?" Marcus swallowed hard. "Yes, but..." "Did you interview any witnesses before making the arrest?" "There wasn't time." "Did you review any evidence, security footage, cell phone recordings?" "The situation required immediate..." "Did you read my daughter her Miranda rights?" Marcus's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. "I'll take that as a no." Victoria took a step closer. "Did you notify school administration before entering the campus?" "Did you contact Child Protective Services as required when arresting a minor?" "Look, she attacked my son." "I have 17 years of courtroom experience, Officer Garrett. I know what a lie looks like." Victoria's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but it carried through the silent station like thunder. "My daughter did not attack anyone. Your son fabricated an accusation to weaponize your badge. And you, without evidence, without witnesses, without following a single protocol, arrested a minor, used excessive force, and denied her basic constitutional rights." She pulled out her phone. "I am going to make some calls now. First to my attorney, then to the Department of Justice, then to every news outlet in this state." "Wait." Marcus held up his hands. "Wait, please. Let's just talk about this." "Talk about what?" "Maybe we got off on the wrong foot here. Maybe there was a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding." Victoria laughed, but there was no humor in it. "My daughter has bruises on her wrists from your handcuffs. She was dragged out of school in front of hundreds of students. She was denied the right to contact her parent. And you want to call this a misunderstanding? I'm willing to drop all charges." "There are no charges to drop. There was no crime." Victoria stepped so close to Marcus that he had to back up. "But there will be. By the time I'm done, you'll be facing charges for false arrest, civil rights violations, assault on a minor, and anything else my legal team can make stick." "Judge Mitchell, please." Marcus's voice had taken on a desperate edge. "I have a family. I have a career. Can't we work something out?" "Work something out." Victoria's eyes blazed. "Like you worked things out with Marcus Chen. Like you've worked things out with everyone who's ever stood up to your family." Marcus's face went white. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do." Victoria held up her phone. "My daughter has been documenting your family's behavior for weeks. Witness statements, photographs, videos, a complete timeline of harassment, intimidation, and abuse." She smiled coldly. Did you really think we weren't going to fight back? The station doors opened again. Captain Rodriguez walked in, took one look at the scene, and stopped dead. What is going on here? Captain? Victoria turned to face him. One of your officers just illegally arrested my daughter based on false accusations from his own son. He denied her constitutional rights, used excessive force, and threatened her. I expect a full internal investigation, and I expect this officer to be placed on administrative leave immediately. Rodriguez looked at Marcus, then at Zara's bruised wrists, then at Victoria. His jaw tightened. Turner, escort Officer Garrett to my office, now. Captain, this is insane, Marcus started. That's an order, Garrett. Turner led Marcus away. The disgraced officer shot Zara a look of pure hatred as he passed, but he didn't say another word. Victoria knelt in front of her daughter again. We're leaving. Can you walk? I'm fine, Mom. Really. You're not fine, but you will be. Victoria helped Zara to her feet. We have a lot of work to do. They walked out of the station together, mother and daughter, heads held high. Zara could feel the eyes of every officer following them. Some looked sympathetic. Others looked worried. A few looked downright hostile. But none of them said a word. The drive home was silent. Victoria gripped the steering wheel with white knuckles, her jaw clenched so tight Zara could see the muscles working. Mom, are you okay? Am I okay? Victoria laughed bitterly. My daughter was just arrested by a corrupt cop in front of her entire school. She has bruises on her wrists. She was threatened and humiliated. And you're asking if I'm okay? I know what you meant, baby. Victoria's voice softened. I'm angry. I'm angrier than I've been in years. But I'm also proud of you. The way you handled yourself in there, you were incredible. I learned from you. Victoria reached over and squeezed her daughter's hand. This isn't over. You know that, right? The Garrett family isn't going to take this lying down. I know. They're going to come after us. They're going to try to destroy our reputation, our career, everything we've built. I know that too. Victoria glanced at her. And you're still willing to fight. Zara thought about Marcus Chen, about Mia's terrified face, about all the students who had been bullied into silence for years, about Tyler's smirking face as he watched his father drag her away in handcuffs. I'm not willing to stop, she said. They pulled into their driveway just as the sun was setting. The sky blazed orange and red like the whole world was on fire. Inside, Victoria immediately went into lawyer mode. She spread papers across the dining room table, pulled out her laptop, and started making calls. Zara sat beside her, organizing the evidence they'd collected over the past weeks. The first call was to their family attorney. Richard, it's Victoria. We have a situation. She explained everything while Zara listened. The harassment, the false arrest, the pattern of intimidation going back years. Richard asked questions, took notes, and promised to start drafting motions immediately. The second call was to a reporter at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Sarah, you're going to want to hear this. I have a story about police corruption, civil rights violations, and a family that's been terrorizing students for decades. The third call was to the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. The fourth was to the State Bar Association. By 10 o'clock, the table was covered in legal pads, printed documents, and evidence files. Victoria's phone buzzed constantly with incoming calls and messages. The videos are already going viral, Zara said, scrolling through her own phone. Look, this one has 100,000 views already. She showed her mother the footage. Tyler knocking the tray from her hands, Marcus storming in, the handcuffs, the crowd of students watching in horror. Good, Victoria said. The more people see the truth, the harder it will be for them to bury it. Zara's phone buzzed with a text from Mia. Oh my God, are you okay? The whole school is talking about what happened. Tyler's been telling everyone his dad is going to make you disappear. Please tell me you're safe." Zara typed back, "I'm safe, and we're just getting started." Another message appeared, this one from an unknown number. "You made a big mistake today. This is your last warning. Drop this now, or your mother won't be the only one who loses everything." Zara showed it to Victoria. Her mother's expression hardened. "Screenshot it. Add it to the evidence file." "Aren't you worried?" "Of course I'm worried. But I'm not going to let fear stop us from doing what's right." Victoria looked at her daughter. "Are you scared?" "Yes." "Good. Fear keeps us sharp, but it doesn't control us." They worked until midnight organizing evidence drafting statements, preparing for the battle ahead. When they finally went to bed, Zara lay awake for a long time staring at the ceiling. She thought about what the next days and weeks would bring. The retaliation, the threats, the pressure from every direction. But she also thought about Marcus Chen, about all the students who had suffered in silence, about the system that had protected the Garrett family for so long. Someone had to stop them. Someone had to finally stand up and say enough. And if that someone was going to be her, then she would face whatever came next. The next morning, Zara woke to the sound of her mother on the phone. "Turn on the news," Victoria called from the kitchen. Zara hurried downstairs and found her mother standing in front of the TV coffee cup, frozen halfway to her lips. The screen showed footage of Zara's arrest playing on a loop. A news anchor spoke over the images. Controversy erupts in the small town of Westbrook after cell phone footage shows a police officer arresting a 17-year-old student in what witnesses describe as a shocking display of excessive force. The student Zara Mitchell is the daughter of State Judge Victoria Mitchell, raising questions about whether this was a targeted attack. The footage cut to Tyler Garrett, giving an interview outside his house. "She attacked me," Tyler said, his voice dripping with fake sincerity. "I was just defending myself. My dad was doing his job. This whole thing is being blown way out of proportion because her mother is a judge." Zara felt sick. He's lying, again. Of course he is. Victoria changed the channel. The same story was playing on every local station. But look, they're also showing the videos of what actually happened. On screen, the footage from student phones clearly showed Tyler knocking the tray from Zara's hands, then clutching his arm in exaggerated pain. The contrast between the video evidence and his interview was stark. "The comment sections are destroying him," Zara said, scrolling through her phone. "People can see the truth." "Some people," Victoria's expression was grim. "But the Garrett family has allies, and they're not going to go down without a fight." As if on cue, Victoria's phone rang. She looked at the caller ID and frowned. "It's the governor's office." She answered, putting it on speaker. "Judge Mitchell, this is Andrew Powell, Chief of Staff for Governor Richardson. The governor has asked me to reach out regarding the situation involving your daughter." "I'm listening." "The governor is concerned about the escalating tensions. He believes it would be in everyone's best interest if this matter could be resolved quietly." Victoria's voice turned to ice. "Define quietly." "The Garrett family has deep roots in this state. Sheriff William Garrett was a close friend of the governor's father. There are relationships that go back decades. And the governor believes that public litigation would be destabilizing for everyone involved." "Are you asking me to drop this?" "I'm asking you to consider the broader implications for your career, for your daughter's future, for the stability of the community." Victoria was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, but absolutely lethal. "Let me make something very clear, Mr. Powell. My daughter was illegally arrested by a corrupt police officer. She was assaulted, humiliated, and denied her constitutional rights. And now you're calling me on behalf of the governor to ask me to sweep it under the rug because the perpetrators have deep roots in this state. Judge Mitchell, I've dedicated my career to upholding the law. I've sent corrupt politicians and crooked cops to prison. I've stood up to powerful people who thought they were above accountability. And you think I'm going to back down now? Because someone in the governor's mansion is worried about destabilizing relationships. This could have consequences for your position. Threaten me again. Victoria interrupted. And I'll add obstruction of justice to the charges I'm filing against everyone involved in this cover-up, including whoever authorized this call. She hung up. Zara stared at her mother with wide eyes. They're really trying to bury this? They're trying. They'll fail. Victoria grabbed her briefcase. Get dressed. We have work to do. 2 hours later, they were at the offices of Richard Chen and Associates. Richard was a pit bull in a three-piece suit with a reputation for taking on cases others considered unwinnable. I've reviewed the evidence, Richard said, spreading files across his conference table. This is bad. For the Garretts, I mean. Not just the false arrest. I've found documentation of at least 7 other students who were targeted by Tyler Garrett over the past 3 years. Vandalism. Threats. One case of physical assault that was covered up by school administrators. Marcus Chen, Zara said quietly. Richard nodded. He's one of them. I've already reached out. He and his family are willing to testify. Victoria leaned forward. What else? Officer Marcus Garrett has a history of complaints, excessive force, racial profiling, evidence tampering. The department buried all of it. Richard pulled out another file. And then there's the grandfather, Sheriff William Garrett. He retired before any formal investigations could be launched, but I have sources who say he ran that department like his personal fiefdom. Drugs planted on suspects. Witnesses intimidated, political opponents targeted. 3 generations of corruption, Victoria said grimly, and finally protected by a network of allies in government law enforcement and the judiciary. Richard looked at her over his glasses. This isn't going to be a simple lawsuit, Victoria. This is going to be war. I know. They have resources, connections. They've been doing this for decades and getting away with it. He paused. Are you sure you want to take this on? Victoria looked at Zara. Her daughter's wrists still bore faint marks from the handcuffs. But her eyes were steady, determined, unafraid. We're sure, Victoria said. Let's bury them. That evening, as they were leaving Richard's office, Zara's phone rang. The caller ID showed Mia's name. Mia? What's wrong? Zara, you need to be careful. Mia's voice was shaking. Tyler was at school today. He shouldn't have been. Everyone expected him to be suspended, but he just walked in like nothing happened. What? And he was talking to people, telling them that you and your mom are going to be sorry, that his grandfather has friends who can make problems disappear. Mia's breath caught. He said something about fire, Zara, about how fires happen all the time in old neighborhoods. Zara's blood ran cold. She told her mother what Mia had said. Victoria's expression hardened. We're increasing security. Tonight. Mom, do you think they'd actually... I think the Garrett family has been destroying people for 3 generations without consequences. I think they're scared now, and scared people do desperate things. Victoria put a protective arm around her daughter. But we're not backing down. We're just going to be smart. They drove home in tense silence. When they pulled into their driveway, Victoria's headlights illuminated something that made them both freeze. Someone had spray-painted words across their garage door. Know your place. Below the words was a crude drawing of flames. Victoria called the police immediately. 2 officers arrived within minutes, not from Westbrook, but from the neighboring county. They photographed the vandalism, took statements, and promised to increase patrols in the area. This is clearly intimidation, one officer said. Given the high-profile nature of your situation, we're treating it seriously. After they left, Zara and Victoria stood in their driveway, staring at the hateful message. They're scared, Victoria said finally. How can you tell? Because they're making mistakes. Threats like this. She gestured at the garage. They're not strategic. They're emotional. Desperate. She put her arm around Zara. The Garrett family has never had to fight for real. They've always had the system on their side. But now they're facing someone who knows how to use that same system against them. What do we do now? Victoria smiled grimly. Now we document this. Add it to the evidence. Show the world exactly who we're dealing with. She pulled out her phone and took photos from every angle. And then we keep fighting, one day at a time, one piece of evidence at a time, until there's nowhere left for them to hide. That night, Zara couldn't sleep. She lay in bed watching the shadows move across her ceiling, listening to every creak and rustle outside her window. Her phone buzzed. Another message from an unknown number. Last chance. Drop this now, or what happens next is on you. She stared at the words for a long moment. Then she screenshotted the message, added it to her evidence folder, and typed a response. We're not afraid of you, and we're not stopping. She put her phone down and closed her eyes. Whatever came next, she was ready. But deep down in a place she didn't want to acknowledge, she knew the Garrett family wasn't done. The vandalism was just a warning. The real attack was still coming. And when it did, everything would change. The next 3 days passed in a blur of legal meetings and sleepless nights. Victoria barely left her home office, building the case piece by piece. Richard Chen's team worked around the clock, tracking down witnesses and documenting the Garrett family's decades of abuse. Phone calls came at all hours, some from allies offering support, others from anonymous callers, breathing threats into the receiver before hanging up. Zara stayed home from school, not because she was afraid, but because Victoria wanted to keep her close while they prepared their next moves. The viral videos had made Zara's face recognizable across the state. News vans parked at the end of their street. Reporters called, constantly begging for interviews. They gave none. Not yet. On Thursday morning, 4 days after the arrest, Zara woke to the smell of smoke. She sat up in bed, heart pounding. The clock on her nightstand read 4:47 a.m. The smell was faint, but unmistakable, acrid chemical wrong. She ran to her window and saw orange light flickering against the garage. "Mom?" Zara sprinted down the hallway screaming. Victoria burst out of her bedroom, already reaching for her phone. "Call 911, now." Victoria grabbed Zara's arm. "Stay inside. Don't go near the windows." "Mom, the garage." "I know, baby, I know." Through the kitchen window they could see flames licking up the side of their garage. The fire was growing fast, too fast. Smoke billowed into the night sky. Zara's hands shook as she dialed. 911, what is your emergency? "Our garage is on fire. Someone set it on fire. We need help." The dispatcher's voice was calm, professional. "Ma'am, what is your address? Are you in a safe location?" Zara gave the information while Victoria grabbed the fire extinguisher from under the sink. She started toward the door. "Mom, don't." "Stay here." Victoria ran outside. Zara watched through the window as her mother sprayed the extinguisher toward the base of the flames, but the fire had already spread too far. The heat pushed Victoria back. She retreated, phone pressed to her ear, shouting instructions to the dispatcher. Sirens wailed in the distance. Neighbors emerged from their houses, drawn by the commotion. Some stood in their driveways, watching in horror. Others pulled out phones to record the scene. The first fire truck arrived in under 5 minutes. Firefighters jumped into action, unspooling hoses and shouting commands. Water blasted against the burning structure, sending steam and smoke swirling into the air. Zara ran outside to stand beside her mother. They watched together as their garage was consumed by flames. "They did this," Zara said, her voice hollow. "The Garretts." Victoria didn't answer. Her jaw was set, her eyes reflecting the orange glow of the fire. It took 30 minutes to bring the blaze under control. By then, the garage was destroyed, nothing but charred beams and melted debris. The fire investigator arrived just as dawn was breaking, picking his way through the wreckage with a flashlight. "Electrical malfunction," he announced after barely 15 minutes. Looks like faulty wiring near the outlet by the workbench. Victoria stepped forward. That's impossible. The investigator, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, looked up from his clipboard. Ma'am, I smelled gasoline before the fire started. My daughter smelled it too. This wasn't an accident. We found no evidence of accelerants. You've been here for 15 minutes. You haven't even conducted a proper investigation. The investigator's expression hardened. Ma'am, I've been doing this for 20 years. I know what an electrical fire looks like. And I've been practicing law for longer than that. I know what a cover-up looks like. A police officer approached one of Marcus Garrett's colleagues, Zara recognized from the station. Everything okay here, Judge Mitchell? Victoria turned to face him. Officer Jenkins, how nice of you to show up. Just doing my job, ma'am, making sure everyone's safe. And I'm sure it's just a coincidence that you're the responding officer. Just like it's a coincidence that the fire investigator is ruling this an accident before he's even examined the scene. Jenkins's smile didn't reach his eyes. Given your current situation with the department, you might want to be careful about making accusations you can't prove. Is that a threat? Just friendly advice. Victoria took a step toward him. Let me give you some advice in return, Officer Jenkins. Everything that happens from this point forward is being documented. Every suspicious response time, every premature conclusion, every attempt to intimidate my family. She pulled out her phone and took a photo of his badge. When this case goes to trial, and it will go to trial, every single person who participated in this cover-up will be held accountable. Jenkins's smile faltered. He glanced at the fire investigator, who suddenly looked nervous. We're just doing our jobs here, Judge Mitchell. No, you're protecting criminals, and eventually that protection is going to run out. The crowd of neighbors had grown. Several were filming the confrontation. Victoria noticed and raised her voice slightly. My daughter was illegally arrested. Our home has been vandalized. And now someone has committed arson. The pattern is clear to anyone paying attention. She looked directly at Jenkins's body camera. The Garrett family has terrorized this community for decades, but their time is running out. She turned and walked back toward the house, Zara following close behind. Inside, Victoria's composure finally cracked. She leaned against the kitchen counter, her shoulders shaking. Mom, I'm okay. Victoria took a deep breath. I'm so angry, Zara. They burned our garage. They could have burned down our house. They could have killed us. But they didn't. This time. Victoria looked at her daughter with haunted eyes. What if next time? There won't be a next time. We're going to stop them. Victoria pulled Zara into a fierce hug. I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry I dragged you into this. You didn't drag me into anything. Tyler Garrett did this. His father did this. And we're going to make them pay for every single thing they've done. Victoria held her tighter. When did you become so brave? I learned from my mom. They stood together in the kitchen as the sun rose higher, casting long shadows through the windows. Outside, the firefighters were packing up their equipment. The garage still smoldered, sending thin wisps of smoke into the morning air. But inside, mother and daughter were already planning their next move. By noon, Richard Chen had filed an emergency motion requesting an independent investigation into the fire. By 2 p.m., he had secured a private forensic expert to examine the scene. By 4 p.m., that expert had found what the fire investigator had missed or chosen to ignore. Clear evidence of accelerant use, the expert said, spreading photographs across Victoria's dining room table. These pour patterns are consistent with gasoline being deliberately splashed along the base of the structure. This was arson, no question. Victoria studied the photos. Can you testify to this? Absolutely. And I can also testify that any competent investigator would have noticed these patterns immediately. The fact that the initial report ruled it electrical suggests either gross incompetence or deliberate falsification. We'll take option B. Richard said grimly. Add it to the list of charges. Zara's phone buzzed. A text from Mia. Are you okay? I saw the news about the fire. Everyone at school is talking about it. Some people are saying you set it yourself for attention. Zara felt her stomach turn. They're spreading rumors that I set my own garage on fire. Of course they are, Victoria said. That's what they do. They can't win on facts, so they attack credibility. But people can't actually believe. Some will. Some always do. Victoria put a hand on her daughter's shoulder. That's why we have to stay focused on the truth. The evidence will speak for itself. That evening, Officer Devin Turner showed up at their door. Zara recognized him immediately, the young officer who had removed her handcuffs at the station. He stood on their porch, looking nervous, glancing over his shoulder like he expected to be followed. Judge Mitchell, I'm sorry to bother you at home. Victoria opened the door wider. Officer Turner, what can I do for you? He swallowed hard. I have information. About Officer Garrett. About the department. But I need to know if I talk to you, can you protect me? Victoria studied him for a long moment, then she stepped aside. Come in. They sat in the living room, Victoria, Zara, and the young officer, who looked like he was about to jump out of his skin. I've been on the force for 3 years, Turner began. When I joined, I thought I was going to help people, protect the community. But it didn't take long to realize that some officers like Marcus Garrett, they don't care about protecting anyone except themselves. What do you know, Officer Turner? I know about the body camera footage. Zara leaned forward. Marcus claimed his camera malfunctioned. It didn't. Turner pulled a flash drive from his pocket. Officer Garrett came to me right after your daughter's arrest. He ordered me to delete the footage from the server. Said it was a direct order from above. But you didn't delete it, Victoria said. I made copies first. Turner's hands were shaking as he placed the drive on the coffee table. It's all there. The full arrest unedited. Everything Officer Garrett said and did. Plus, he hesitated. Plus footage from the past month, showing how Officer Garrett and his son have been targeting other students. Other families. Victoria picked up the drive carefully. Why are you doing this, Officer Turner? Because what they did to your daughter was wrong. What they've been doing to people in this community for years is wrong. His voice cracked. I became a cop to help people, not to watch criminals with badges destroy innocent lives. You understand the risk you're taking? Yes, ma'am, but I can't stay silent anymore. Someone has to stand up to them. After Turner left, Victoria and Zara watched the footage together. It was worse than they had imagined. The body camera showed Marcus Garrett storming onto the school campus, shoving past Principal Hayes, ignoring all attempts to calm the situation. It captured every word he said to Zara, the threats, the racial undertones, the excessive force, as he cuffed her. But it also captured something else. Audio of Marcus speaking to Tyler before the arrest. Don't worry, son. By the time I'm done with her, she'll wish she never set foot in this town. What about her mom, the judge? We've handled judges before. This one's no different. Victoria paused the video. Her face had gone pale. They planned this, she said quietly. They knew who I was from the beginning. This wasn't just Tyler bullying a new student. This was a coordinated attack on our entire family. Why? Victoria was silent for a moment. The corruption case I've been working on. The one involving local law enforcement. She looked at Zara. William Garrett's name has come up in the investigation. He may be connected to a network of corrupt officials going back decades. So they weren't just protecting Tyler. No, they were protecting their entire operation. Victoria stood up and began pacing. They saw you as a threat. They figured if they could intimidate you, intimidate us, we would back off. Drop the investigation. Keep quiet. But we didn't. No, we didn't. Victoria stopped pacing and looked at her daughter. And now they're desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. Big ones. The next morning, Richard Chen called an emergency meeting. "We need to move fast," he said. "The footage Turner provided changes everything, but the Garrett family has allies everywhere. If they find out we have this evidence, they'll try to bury it, or bury us. What do you suggest?" "We file for an immediate misconduct hearing. Get everything on public record before they can stop us." Richard pulled out a thick folder. "I've also been in contact with the Department of Justice. They're interested in expanding their investigation to include the Garrett family's connections to the corruption network your mother uncovered." Zara felt a surge of hope. "So this is bigger than just Marcus and Tyler." "Much bigger. William Garrett, the grandfather, he was the linchpin of a system that protected corrupt officials for decades. His son continued it, and his grandson." Richard shook his head. "Tyler Garrett isn't just a bully. He's being groomed to be the next generation of untouchable criminals in this county." "Until now," Victoria said. "Until now." Richard agreed. "The hearing is scheduled for Monday, 3 days from now. Are you ready?" Zara thought about everything she'd been through. The harassment, the arrest, the fire, the constant threats and intimidation. "I've been ready since the first day Tyler Garrett knocked my books out of my hands." The weekend was a blur of preparation. Victoria and Zara worked with Richard's team to organize their evidence. Witness statements were finalized. Expert testimony was arranged. The body camera footage was authenticated and duplicated with copies stored in multiple secure locations. Mia Rodriguez came by on Saturday bringing food and moral support. "The whole school is buzzing," she said, helping Zara sort through documents. "Everyone knows the hearing is Monday. Some kids are planning to show up and support you." "And the others?" Mia's expression darkened. "Tyler's been telling everyone that his grandfather is going to make this all go away, that by Tuesday you and your mom will be ruined and he'll be back on top. He's delusional." "Maybe, but he still has supporters, people who are scared of his family, people who've bought into his lies." Mia handed Zara a stack of papers. "I've been collecting more statements. 3 more students came forward yesterday. They want to testify about things Tyler did to them." Zara flipped through the statements. Each one detailed harassment, intimidation, destruction of property. The pattern was undeniable. "Thank you, Mia, for everything." "Don't thank me yet. We haven't won anything." "We will." Sunday night, Zara couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through her testimony in her mind. Tomorrow would change everything. Either they would expose the Garrett family's corruption once and for all, or... She didn't want to think about the alternative. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Enjoy your last night of peace. Tomorrow everything burns." Zara stared at the message for a long moment. Then she screenshotted it, added it to her evidence folder, and typed a reply. "See you in court." She put her phone down and closed her eyes. Whatever happened tomorrow, she was ready. Monday morning arrived gray and cold. Zara dressed in the outfit her mother had chosen, conservative, professional, the kind of thing that projected seriousness without drawing attention. Victoria wore her most authoritative suit, the one she saved for high-profile cases. They drove to the courthouse in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. News vans lined the street outside. Reporters shouted questions as they walked up the steps. Cameras flashed. Microphones were thrust in their faces. "Judge Mitchell, do you have any comment on the allegations against Officer Garrett?" "Zara, how does it feel to be at the center of this controversy?" They pushed through without answering, entering the courthouse through a side door that Richard had arranged. Inside the main chamber was already packed. Television cameras lined the back wall. Officers in uniform filled one side there to support Marcus Garrett. On the other side sat students, teachers, and community members who had come to support Zara. And in the front row, looking like he owned the place, sat Sheriff William Garrett. He was older than Zara had imagined, silver-haired, weathered face, cold blue eyes that seemed to see everything. He wore his old sheriff's uniform medals gleaming on his chest. When he saw Victoria and Zara enter, he smiled. It was the smile of a predator watching prey walk into a trap. Zara felt her mother's hand tighten on her shoulder. "Don't let him intimidate you," Victoria whispered. "That's all he has left." They took their seats at the plaintiff's table. Richard was already there, surrounded by boxes of evidence and legal documents. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready," Zara said. The door at the back of the chamber opened, and Marcus Garrett walked in with his attorney. He looked different than he had at the police station, smaller, somehow less confident. But when he saw Zara, his eyes hardened with familiar hatred. Tyler followed behind his father, dressed in a suit that made him look like a little boy playing grown-up. His usual smirk was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like fear. Good, Zara thought. Be afraid. The panel members entered, and everyone rose. Commissioner Walsh took his seat at the center of the raised platform, flanked by two other officials. "This hearing will come to order," Walsh announced. "We are here to address allegations of misconduct against Officer Marcus Garrett of the Westbrook Police Department. Officer Garrett, how do you respond to these allegations?" Marcus stood. "Completely false, sir. I was responding to a legitimate call about a violent student. Everything I did was by the book." "We'll see about that." Walsh turned to Richard. "Counsel, you may present your opening statement." Richard rose, buttoning his jacket. "Commissioner Walsh, members of the panel, what you are about to see is not just evidence of one officer's misconduct. It is evidence of a decades-long pattern of abuse, corruption, and intimidation that has terrorized this community, while those in power looked the other way." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We will present eyewitness testimony from students who have been bullied, threatened, and assaulted by Tyler Garrett, while school administrators did nothing. We will present documentation of complaints against Officer Marcus Garrett that were buried by his superiors. We will present forensic evidence that our client's home was deliberately set on fire in an act of retaliation." Marcus shifted in his seat. His attorney whispered something urgently in his ear. "And most importantly," Richard continued, "we will present video evidence that directly contradicts Officer Garrett's claim that his body camera malfunctioned. Evidence that shows exactly what happened on the day of Zara Mitchell's arrest and what Officer Garrett said before he arrived at the school." The chamber erupted in murmurs. William Garrett's smile had vanished. He leaned forward, his cold eyes fixed on Richard with deadly intensity. "The Garrett family has operated above the law for 3 generations," Richard said. "Today that ends." He sat down. Walsh turned to Marcus's attorney. "Does the defense wish to respond?" The attorney stood looking flustered. We reserve our response for after the plaintiff's evidence is presented." "Very well." Walsh nodded to Richard. "Call your first witness." Richard stood. "We call Zara Mitchell." Zara rose from her seat, her heart pounding. She walked to the witness stand, feeling every eye in the room follow her movement. She was sworn in, then settled into the chair, adjusting her blazer. "Ms. Mitchell," Richard began, "please tell us in your own words about your first day at Westbrook High School." Zara took a deep breath, and she began to speak. She told them about Tyler's deliberate shoulder check in the hallway, about the racial slurs and threats, about the vandalized locker and stolen belongings, about the harassment that escalated every single day. She told them about the cafeteria incident, how Tyler had knocked her tray from her hands, then pretended she had attacked him, how he had called his father while she stood there, surrounded by witnesses who could see the truth. She told them about the arrest, the handcuffs that were too tight, the threats, the humiliation of being dragged through the school in front of hundreds of students, and she told them about the fire. "I woke up at 4:47 a.m. to the smell of gasoline," she said, her voice steady. "By the time I got to the window, our garage was already in flames." The chamber was absolutely silent. The fire investigator ruled it an electrical malfunction after 15 minutes on scene. But our private forensic expert found clear evidence of accelerant use, poor patterns consistent with deliberate arson. She looked directly at Marcus Garrett. "Someone tried to burn down our home. Someone wanted to send us a message. But we're not backing down. We're not going to be intimidated into silence. The truth deserves to be heard, no matter how powerful the people who want to bury it. Richard let her words hang in the air for a moment. Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. No further questions. Marcus's attorney rose for cross-examination. He was a slick-looking man in an expensive suit clearly hired for his ability to intimidate witnesses. Ms. Mitchell, isn't it true that you have a history of conflict with other students? No. Isn't it true that you were asked to leave your previous school due to behavioral issues? No, that's a complete lie. Isn't it true that you deliberately provoked my client's son on your very first day at Westbrook High? Zara felt anger rising in her chest, but she kept her voice calm. I walked down a hallway. Tyler Garrett chose to assault me. The only thing I did was refuse to apologize for existing. You filmed Mr. Garrett without his consent. I documented harassment, which is legal and necessary apparently, since school administrators refused to do anything about it. The attorney's face reddened. You expect this panel to believe that a 17-year-old girl is innocent, while an entire family of respected public servants is corrupt. Zara leaned forward. I expect this panel to look at the evidence, the videos, the witness statements, the forensic reports. I expect them to see the truth that's been hiding in plain sight for decades. She looked at William Garrett, who was watching her with an expression of barely contained rage. Your clients have been terrorizing this community for 3 generations. They've destroyed lives, ruined careers, burned down homes, and they did it because they thought no one could stop them. She turned back to the attorney. They were wrong. The attorney opened his mouth to respond, but Commissioner Walsh cut him off. I think we've heard enough cross-examination for now. The witness may step down. Zara returned to her seat, her heart racing. Victoria squeezed her hand under the table. That was perfect, her mother whispered. I'm so proud of you. Richard called his next witness Mia Rodriguez, who testified about Tyler's pattern of bullying and the school's refusal to act. Then came David the sophomore, who had been pushed down the stairs. Then Marcus Chen, appearing via video link from his new home in California, his voice shaking, as he described how Tyler had destroyed his life while Officer Garrett planted evidence to seal his fate. Witness after witness came forward. The evidence piled up like an avalanche. And then Richard played the body camera footage. The chamber watched in stunned silence as Marcus Garrett was shown storming through the school, shoving past staff, using excessive force on a minor who offered no resistance. But it was the audio that destroyed them. Don't worry, son. By the time I'm done with her, she'll wish she never set foot in this town. What about her mom, the judge? We've handled judges before. This one's no different. The chamber erupted. Reporters typed furiously. The officers who had come to support Marcus looked away in disgust. And William Garrett, the patriarch, the former sheriff, the man who had built this empire of corruption, suddenly stood up. This is outrageous, he shouted, his face purple with rage. This whole hearing is a witch hunt. I've made too many calls and pulled too many strings to let this little charade. He stopped abruptly, realizing what he had just admitted. The chamber went dead silent. Commissioner Walsh leaned forward. Sheriff Garrett, would you like to repeat that for the record? William's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. Bailiff, Walsh said calmly, please detain former Sheriff Garrett for questioning regarding obstruction of justice. 2 officers moved toward William, who backed away, his face contorting with disbelief. You can't do this to me. I built this county. I have friends in the state capitol. 1 phone call and what? Victoria stood, her voice cutting through his tirade. You'll abuse more power, threaten more families, burn down more homes. The bailiffs reached William and took his arms. He struggled, but at 73 years old, he was no match for them. This isn't over, he screamed as they led him away. You haven't won anything. But looking at his face, the fear, the desperation, the knowledge that his empire was crumbling, Zara knew that wasn't true. They had won. The hearing wasn't over yet, but the tide had turned. The truth was finally out. and no amount of money, power, or threats could put it back in the box. Commissioner Walsh called for a 30-minute recess. In the hallway outside the chamber, Zara was surrounded by supporters. Mia hugged her fiercely. Students from Westbrook shook her hand and thanked her for being brave. Even some of the officers who had come to support Marcus approached her with apologetic expressions. "We didn't know," one of them said quietly. "We didn't know how bad it was." Victoria found her daughter in the crowd and pulled her aside. "Are you okay?" Zara nodded. "I'm okay. I can't believe it's actually happening." "It's happening." Victoria's eyes were wet. "You did this, baby. Your courage. Your determination. You started something that no one else could. We did it together." "Yes." Victoria pulled her into a hug. "Together." Across the hallway, Zara saw Tyler Garrett standing alone. His father was conferring with attorneys. His grandfather was being processed somewhere in the building. The support system that had protected him his entire life was collapsing around him. He looked up and caught her eye. For a moment she expected to see hatred, defiance, the same cruelty that had defined every interaction they'd ever had. But what she saw instead was something she hadn't expected. Fear. Tyler Garrett was finally afraid. Zara held his gaze for a long moment. Then she turned away and walked back toward the chamber with her mother. The hearing wasn't over. The verdict hadn't been delivered. There were still battles to fight, still challenges to face. But standing there surrounded by people who had found the courage to speak the truth, Zara knew that everything had changed. The Garrett family's reign was ending, and she had helped bring it down. The 30-minute recess felt like hours. Zara sat in a small conference room with her mother and Richard, trying to process everything that had just happened. William Garrett, the patriarch, the man who had terrorized this community for decades, had been dragged away in front of cameras and reporters. His own words had condemned him. "We've handled judges before. This one's no different." Those words played on loop in Zara's mind. "What happens now?" she asked. Richard was on his phone scrolling through messages. "The panel is deliberating, but honestly, after what William said in there, I don't see how they can do anything but rule in our favor." "Don't underestimate them," Victoria said quietly. "The Garrett family has allies everywhere. Even with William in custody, there are people who will try to protect Marcus." "Mom, you saw the evidence, the body camera footage, the witness testimonies. How could anyone—" "Because that's how power works, baby." Victoria's voice was tired but determined. "Powerful people protect each other. They close ranks. They find ways to explain away evidence and discredit witnesses." Richard put down his phone. "She's right. I just got word that the police union is already issuing statements defending Marcus. They're calling this a politically motivated attack on law enforcement." Zara felt her stomach drop. "Even after everything we showed them." "Especially after everything we showed them. They're scared. When powerful people get scared, they fight dirty." A knock on the door interrupted them. A bailiff poked his head in. "The panel is ready to resume. They're calling everyone back." Victoria stood and straightened her jacket. She looked at Zara with fierce determination. "Whatever happens in there, remember we've already won. The truth is out. The videos are everywhere. Even if the panel doesn't rule the way we want, the court of public opinion has already delivered its verdict." "But I want real justice, not just public opinion." "So do I, baby." Victoria squeezed her hand. "So do I." They walked back into the chamber together. The energy in the room had shifted dramatically. Officers who had come to support Marcus now sat with arms crossed and expressions of doubt. The press section was buzzing with reporters typing furiously on laptops. And in the front row where William Garrett had sat with such arrogance just an hour ago, there was an empty chair. Marcus Garrett sat at the defendant's table, his face ashen. His attorney whispered urgently in his ear, but Marcus seemed barely conscious. The confident cop who had stormed into Westbrook High to arrest an innocent girl was gone. In his place was a man watching his entire world collapse. Tyler sat behind his father, looking small and lost. Without his grandfather's imposing presence, without his father's badge to hide behind, he was just a scared teenager who had finally realized that actions have consequences. Commissioner Walsh entered, followed by the other panel members. Everyone rose. "Be seated." Walsh adjusted his glasses and opened a folder. "Before we proceed with any ruling, I need to address the incident involving former Sheriff William Garrett." The chamber fell silent. Mr. Garrett's outburst, combined with his admission that he has been, quote, "pulling strings," related to this case, has resulted in his detention pending investigation for obstruction of justice witness, intimidation, and conspiracy. Walsh looked up. The Department of Justice has also indicated interest in expanding their investigation to include the Garrett family's connections to a broader corruption network. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Marcus sank lower in his chair. "Furthermore," Walsh continued, "we have been contacted by the State Attorney General's office. They are opening a separate investigation into the Westbrook Police Department's handling of complaints against Officer Garrett over the past decade." Richard leaned over to Victoria. "This is bigger than we thought." "It always was." Walsh set down the folder. "Given the gravity of the evidence presented today, and the serious allegations of systemic misconduct, this panel has reached a unanimous decision." Zara's heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. "Officer Marcus Garrett, please rise." Marcus stood slowly like a man walking to his own execution. His attorney stood beside him, looking equally defeated. "Officer Garrett, this panel finds you guilty of multiple serious violations of department policy, constitutional law, and basic human decency." The words hit like hammer blows. "You are guilty of false arrest. You arrested a minor without probable cause, without evidence, and without following mandatory procedures." Marcus gripped the edge of the table. "You are guilty of excessive force. Video evidence clearly shows you using unnecessary physical restraint on a compliant individual, causing visible injuries." Zara touched her wrists, remembering the bite of the handcuffs. "You are guilty of civil rights violations. Your treatment of Zara Mitchell, combined with audio evidence of racially motivated comments, constitutes a clear violation of her constitutional rights." Someone in the gallery gasped. "You are guilty of evidence tampering. You ordered a fellow officer to delete body camera footage that would have contradicted your false report. When he refused, you attempted to access the server yourself." Marcus's attorney put a hand on his shoulder, but Marcus shook it off. "And finally, you are guilty of conspiracy to commit obstruction of justice in coordination with your father, former Sheriff William Garrett." Walsh paused, letting the charges sink in. "Effective immediately, you are terminated from the Westbrook Police Department. Your badge, weapon, and all department property will be surrendered before you leave this building." Marcus's face crumpled. For a moment, Zara almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "Furthermore," Walsh continued, "this panel is forwarding all evidence to the district attorney's office with a recommendation for criminal prosecution. The charges will likely include assault, false imprisonment, civil rights violations, and conspiracy." "This is insane." Marcus finally spoke, his voice cracking. "I was protecting my son. I was doing my job. You can't—" "Officer Garrett." Walsh's voice was ice. "You had the chance to speak in your defense. You chose to lie. The evidence contradicts every word you said." He leaned forward. "You weren't protecting your son. You were teaching him that the law doesn't apply to people like you. You were teaching him that badges are weapons to be used against anyone who challenges your authority." Walsh turned to look at Tyler. And clearly the lesson was learned. Tyler shrank under the commissioner's gaze. "Which brings us to the matter of Tyler Garrett." Walsh shuffled papers. "While this panel's primary jurisdiction concerns Officer Garrett's conduct, we are compelled to address the pattern of behavior that precipitated this incident." Tyler's attorney, a nervous-looking woman who had barely spoken during the hearing, stood up. "Commissioner, my client is a minor. Any disciplinary action should be handled through appropriate juvenile channels. Agreed. However, this panel is recommending that the Westbrook School District permanently expel Tyler Garrett for documented harassment, intimidation, and assault of fellow students over a period of at least 3 years. You can't do this. Tyler's voice was raw with panic. This isn't fair. She started it. Garrett, sit down. No, you're all believing her lies. My grandfather. Your grandfather just confessed to obstruction of justice in front of a room full of witnesses and cameras. Your father has been terminated and is facing criminal charges. And you, Walsh pointed directly at Tyler, are finally going to face consequences for your actions. Tyler looked around wildly, searching for someone to save him. His father sat motionless, staring at nothing. His grandfather was gone. His friends, his supporters, his entire network of protection had evaporated. He was alone. Additionally, Walsh said, we are recommending that the district attorney's office consider juvenile charges against Tyler Garrett for harassment, intimidation, assault, and conspiracy to commit false imprisonment. Tyler's mother, a thin blonde woman who had been sitting silently in the back, let out a sob. She rushed forward, grabbing her son's arm. Tyler, don't say anything else. Don't say a word. Mom, this isn't fair. I said don't speak. She turned to the panel, tears streaming down her face. My husband and my father-in-law made mistakes. I know that. But Tyler is just a child. He was taught this behavior. He was raised to believe. Mrs. Garrett. Walsh's voice softened slightly. I understand your position as a mother. But your son terrorized students for years. He destroyed lives. He celebrated while your husband arrested an innocent girl. He shook his head. At some point, he was just following what he was taught. Stops being an excuse. Mrs. Garrett collapsed into a chair, pulling Tyler down beside her. The chamber was absolutely silent. Walsh turned to face Zara and Victoria. Ms. Mitchell, Judge Mitchell. His voice carried new warmth. This panel owes you an apology. The system failed you. The institutions that should have protected you instead enabled your persecution. Victoria nodded but said nothing. Your courage in coming forward and documenting the truth and refusing to be intimidated. It has exposed corruption that has plagued this community for decades. Walsh looked at Zara directly. You are 17 years old. You showed more integrity than officers who have worn badges for 20 years. That is remarkable. Zara felt tears pricking at her eyes. She blinked them back. This panel is recommending that the state create a task force to review similar cases across the region. If the Garrett family operated with impunity for this long, it's likely they're not alone. Walsh closed his folder. We are also recommending that the Westbrook Police Department undergo a complete restructuring, including external oversight and mandatory civil rights training. He stood. This hearing is concluded. The gavel struck once. The chamber erupted. Reporters surged toward Zara and Victoria, shouting questions. Supporters pushed forward to offer congratulations. The officers who had come to support Marcus were filing out quietly, heads down, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. Richard grabbed Zara's arm and guided her toward a side exit. We need to get you out before the media swarm gets worse. They pushed through a service door and into a quiet hallway. Victoria followed her heels, clicking rapidly against the floor. That was incredible, Richard said, slightly out of breath. Better than I could have hoped. They threw the book at Marcus. It's not over, Victoria said. Criminal charges still have to go through the DA's office, and the Garretts will appeal everything. Let them appeal, Richard grinned. They don't have a leg to stand on. William's confession alone. A door burst open behind them. Marcus Garrett stood there, his face twisted with rage. His badge was gone. His weapon had been confiscated. But his eyes held the same violent intensity Zara remembered from the day of her arrest. You think you've won? His voice echoed in the narrow hallway. You think this is over? Richard stepped in front of Zara. Officer Garrett, you need to leave. I'm not an officer anymore, remember? Marcus laughed bitterly. Thanks to her. Thanks to her mother. 30 years of service destroyed because some girl couldn't keep her mouth shut. Marcus, walk away. Victoria's voice was calm but commanding. Whatever you're thinking of doing, it will only make things worse. Worse. Marcus took a step forward. My career is over. My father is in custody. My son's future is ruined. How exactly could things get worse? You could go to prison for threatening a judge and her daughter in a courthouse hallway. Victoria replied coolly. There are cameras everywhere, Marcus. Everything you say and do right now is being recorded. Marcus's eyes darted to the ceiling where a small security camera blinked red. You've already lost, Victoria continued. The question now is how much more you want to lose. Walk away. Get a lawyer. Try to salvage whatever you can. But if you take one more step toward my daughter, I will personally ensure you never see the outside of a prison cell. For a long, tense moment, Marcus didn't move. Then his shoulders slumped. This isn't justice, he said quietly. This is revenge. No, Zara spoke for the first time, her voice steady. Justice is what happens when you can't hide behind your badge anymore. Justice is what happens when the truth finally comes out. Marcus looked at her with hollow eyes. You have no idea what you've started, he said. My father has friends, powerful friends, people who won't let this stand. Then they'll fall too. Zara met his gaze without flinching. One by one, however long it takes. Marcus stared at her for another moment. Then he turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. Richard let out a breath he'd been holding. That was intense. Welcome to our life, Victoria said dryly. They found a back exit and emerged into a parking lot behind the courthouse. The afternoon sun was warm, almost peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos inside. Zara stopped walking and looked up at the sky. Mom? Yes, baby. Did that really just happen? Did we really win? Victoria put her arm around her daughter. We won the battle. The war isn't over yet. There will be appeals, countersuits, media attacks. The Garrett's allies will try to spin this as judicial overreach or political persecution. But the truth is out. Yes, the truth is out. Victoria smiled. And that's something they can never take back. Zara's phone buzzed. A text from Mia. OMG! I just saw the news they fired him. Tyler got expelled. You're a hero. More messages flooded in. Students from Westbrook sharing their congratulations. Marcus Chen sending a video of himself crying with relief. Even teachers who had been too scared to speak up before now offered their support. Look at this. Zara showed her mother the messages. People are finally talking. People are finally standing up. Because you showed them it was possible. Victoria's voice was thick with emotion. You showed them that bullies can be beaten, that corrupt cops can be held accountable, that the truth matters. They stood together in the parking lot, mother and daughter, reading the flood of messages that kept pouring in. For the first time in weeks, Zara felt something she had almost forgotten. Hope. 3 hours later, they sat in their living room watching the evening news. Every channel led with the story. Breaking news tonight, Officer Marcus Garrett has been terminated from the Westbrook Police Department following a misconduct hearing that exposed years of abuse and corruption. His father, former Sheriff William Garrett, remains in custody on obstruction charges. Footage played of Marcus being escorted from the courthouse, his face a mask of humiliation. Then William being led away in handcuffs, still shouting about his connections. The story has captured national attention. The anchor continued. Civil rights organizations are calling this a landmark case in police accountability, while law enforcement unions warn of a dangerous precedent being set. The screen cut to an interview with a civil rights attorney. What we saw today is what justice looks like when ordinary people refuse to be silent. A 17-year-old girl documented the abuse she experienced and stood her ground against an entire corrupt system. That's extraordinary. Then a statement from the police union. We are deeply concerned by the political nature of this hearing. Officer Garrett served this community honorably for 30 years. To destroy his career based on edited videos and the testimony of disgruntled students is a travesty. Victoria muted the television. They're going to push that narrative hard. But people can see the truth, Zara said. The videos aren't edited. The witness testimonies aren't fabricated. Anyone with eyes can see what really happened. Some people will always choose to believe what's comfortable rather than what's true. Victoria sighed. But you're right. The evidence is overwhelming. And every day more people are speaking up. As if on cue, Zara's phone rang. She didn't recognize the number. Hello? Is this Zara Mitchell? A woman's voice, professional but warm. Yes. Who is this? My name is Sandra Torres. I'm a producer at CNN. We'd like to invite you and your mother to appear on our evening program tomorrow to share your story. Zara covered the phone and looked at her mother with wide eyes. It's CNN. They want us to do an interview. Victoria considered for a moment, then nodded. Zara returned to the call. We're interested. What time? The next morning brought more news. The district attorney announced that Marcus Garrett would be formally charged with assault, civil rights violations, and conspiracy. Bail was set at $200,000. William Garrett's attorney attempted to have him released on his own recognizance, arguing that a 73-year-old former sheriff posed no flight risk. The judge, a colleague of Victoria's who knew exactly what the Garrett family had done, denied the motion. And Tyler Garrett was officially expelled from Westbrook High School with a recommendation for juvenile prosecution. By noon, Zara's phone had logged over 300 messages of support. Students from schools across the state shared their own stories of bullying and administrative indifference. Teachers wrote about being pressured to stay silent. Even some police officers reached out anonymously to thank her for exposing corruption they had witnessed but been too afraid to report. This is becoming a movement, Mia said when she came over that afternoon. People are using hashtags Justice for Zara, Truth Over Power, and the Blue Wall. It's everywhere. Zara scrolled through social media, still processing the magnitude of what was happening. I just wanted them to leave me alone, she said quietly. I just wanted to go to school without being terrorized. But you did so much more than that. Mia sat beside her. You showed everyone that standing up matters. That one person can make a difference. Not one person. We did this together. You, the other students who testified, Officer Turner Richard and his team. Zara shook her head. I couldn't have done any of this alone. But you started it. You were the first one brave enough to say no. That evening, Zara and Victoria sat in a CNN studio, bright lights making them squint as a makeup artist applied final touches. Just be yourselves, the producer advised. Tell your story honestly. The audience will connect with authenticity. The interview lasted 20 minutes. The host asked about the harassment, the arrest, the fire, the hearing. Zara answered each question calmly, describing events without exaggeration or embellishment. What would you say to other students who are facing similar situations? The host asked. Students who are being bullied or intimidated by people in positions of power. Zara thought carefully before answering. I would say document everything. Keep records. Tell someone you trust. And don't let fear silence you. She looked directly at the camera. The people who abuse power rely on silence. They rely on their victims being too scared or too hopeless to speak up. The moment you find your voice, their power starts to crumble. And what about the argument that you were too aggressive, that you should have just tried to fit in to avoid making waves? Fitting in would have meant accepting abuse. It would have meant letting Tyler Garrett destroy my life the way he destroyed Marcus Chen's life, and so many others. Zara's voice was firm. I didn't choose this fight, but when it came to me, I chose not to run. After the interview aired, the response was overwhelming. Thousands of messages poured in from across the country. People shared their own stories of standing up to bullies and corrupt authorities. Organizations reached out offering support and resources. A producer in Los Angeles asked if they could develop a documentary about the case. And somewhere in Westbrook, in a detention facility designed for juvenile offenders, Tyler Garrett watched the coverage from a common room television. He didn't say a word. For the first time in his life, he had nothing to hide behind. No grandfather pulling strings, no father with a badge, no network of friends and allies protecting him from consequences. He was just another teenage boy who had hurt people and was finally paying the price. When the program ended, he went back to his room and sat on his narrow bed. He thought about all the students he had tormented over the years. Marcus Chen, whose life he had destroyed for bumping into him in a gym. Mia Rodriguez, who had flinched every time he walked past. David, whose art project he had destroyed for entertainment. He thought about Zara Mitchell, the new girl who had refused to be intimidated, who had stood up to him on her very first day and never backed down. For the first time, Tyler Garrett felt something unfamiliar: shame. Meanwhile, in her bedroom at home, Zara was finally allowing herself to feel the weight of everything that had happened. She sat on her bed surrounded by congratulatory messages and media requests and interview offers, and she cried. Not from sadness, not from fear, but from relief. It was over. The nightmare that had begun on her first day at Westbrook High was finally ending. The Garrett family couldn't hurt her anymore. They couldn't hurt anyone anymore. Victoria found her there, tears streaming down her face. "Baby, what's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." Zara wiped her eyes. "Everything's right. For the first time in months, everything is finally right." Victoria sat beside her and pulled her into a hug. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "You have no idea how proud I am. I couldn't have done it without you." "Yes, you could have. You're stronger than you know, Zara. You always have been." They sat together in comfortable silence, mother and daughter, as the evening light faded outside the window. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, appeals, and counter-narratives, and the slow grind of the justice system. The Garrett family wouldn't go down without a fight, and their allies would do everything possible to spin the story in their favor. But tonight, Zara allowed herself to feel victorious. She had stood up to a bully. She had faced down a corrupt cop. She had taken on a family that had terrorized her community for generations, and she had won. Her phone buzzed one more time. A text from an unknown number. She tensed, expecting another threat. But when she opened the message, she found something unexpected. "You don't know me, but I was in the gallery during the hearing today. I'm a cop in a neighboring county. What you did took incredible courage. You've inspired me to speak up about things I've seen in my own department. Thank you for showing me that it's possible." Zara stared at the message for a long moment. Then she smiled and typed a reply. "The truth always finds a way. Good luck." She put her phone down and looked out the window at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Tomorrow, the fight would continue. But tonight, she would rest. She had earned it. 6 months later, Zara stood outside the Westbrook County Courthouse, watching the autumn leaves drift across the stone steps. So much had changed since that first day at Westbrook High. The scared new girl who had walked into unfamiliar hallways was gone, replaced by someone stronger. Someone forged in fire and hardship. She had fought a battle that most adults would have run from, and she had won. But today wasn't about her. Today was sentencing day. Victoria appeared beside her briefcase in hand. "Ready. I've been ready for 6 months." They walked up the steps together past the security checkpoint, through the familiar corridors that had become almost like a second home during the endless hearings and depositions and motions. The courtroom was packed. News cameras lined the back wall. Reporters filled every available seat. This case had become national news, a symbol of police accountability and the power of one person's courage to expose systemic corruption. Zara took her seat in the front row, directly behind the prosecutor's table. Mia sat beside her along with Marcus Chen, who had flown in from California specifically for this day. David was there too, and Aisha and a dozen other students who had finally found their voices after years of silence. They had become a family of survivors. The side door opened, and Marcus Garrett was led in by two bailiffs. He wore an orange jumpsuit now, instead of his police uniform. His wrists were shackled. His face was gaunt and pale from months in county jail awaiting trial. He didn't look at anyone as he shuffled to the defendant's table. A few minutes later, the door opened again. William Garrett entered, also in shackles, also in orange. The former sheriff who had terrorized this county for decades looked like a broken man. His silver hair had turned white. His shoulders slumped. His cold blue eyes, once so intimidating, now stared at nothing. He was placed at a separate table from his son. The charges against them had multiplied over the past 6 months. As more witnesses came forward, as more evidence was uncovered, the scope of their crimes had expanded dramatically. Marcus faced charges of assault, civil rights violations, false imprisonment evidence, tampering conspiracy, and most seriously, arson. The fire that had destroyed Zara's garage had been traced back to him through cell phone records and witness testimony. A neighbor had seen his car parked down the street minutes before the flames erupted. William faced even more charges: obstruction of justice, conspiracy, witness intimidation spanning decades. The DOJ investigation had uncovered a network of corruption that extended far beyond Westbrook. Judges bribed evidence, manufactured innocent people imprisoned to protect the Garrett family's power. All rise. Judge Patricia Hammond entered the courtroom. She was a stern-faced woman in her 60s, known for her uncompromising commitment to justice. Victoria had specifically requested that she be assigned to this case. Be seated. Hammond spent several minutes reviewing documents before looking up. We are here today for the sentencing of Marcus Raymond Garrett and William Edward Garrett, who have both been found guilty of multiple felonies following a trial that lasted 4 weeks. She paused. Before I deliver the sentences, I will allow impact statements from the victims. The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, we have several witnesses who wish to address the court. Proceed. Marcus Chen was first. He walked to the podium slowly, his hands trembling. He was 20 now, a sophomore at UCLA, but standing in front of the Garretts, he looked like the scared teenager he had been 3 years ago. When Tyler Garrett decided to destroy my life, I didn't know what to do. His voice cracked. I was a good student. I had friends. I had dreams. And then overnight everything was gone. He looked directly at Marcus Garrett. Your son bullied me for weeks. He vandalized my locker. He spread rumors. And when I tried to report it, you came to my house. You told my parents that I was the problem, that I was a troublemaker, that if we didn't drop the complaint, you would find something to charge me with. Marcus wouldn't meet his eyes. 2 weeks later, you found drugs in my backpack. Drugs that I never touched. Drugs that someone planted. Chen's voice grew stronger. I was expelled. My family had to move. I spent years in therapy trying to recover from what you did to me. He turned to William. And you. You made it all possible. You built a system where your family could do whatever they wanted to, whoever they wanted. You destroyed people who had no power to fight back. Chen took a shaky breath. But Zara Mitchell did fight back. And because of her, I'm standing here today. Because of her, you're finally facing justice. He stepped away from the podium, tears streaming down his face. One by one, other victims took their turn. A man named Robert Jenkins described how William had framed him for assault 20 years ago because he had dated a woman the sheriff wanted. He had spent 3 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. A woman named Sandra Torres talked about her brother who had died in police custody after confronting Marcus Garrett during a traffic stop. The official ruling was suicide. She had never believed it. A teacher named Michael Patterson described being forced out of Westbrook High after he tried to report Tyler's bullying to Child Protective Services. Marcus had visited him at home and made it very clear what would happen if he didn't withdraw the complaint. Story after story, crime after crime, a decades-long pattern of abuse and corruption that had finally been dragged into the light. Finally, it was Zara's turn. She walked to the podium feeling the weight of every eye in the room. The cameras, the reporters, the Garretts. Her mother watching with pride from the gallery. 6 months ago, I walked into Westbrook High School as a new student. Within hours, Tyler Garrett had decided that I didn't belong there, that I needed to know my place. She paused, gathering her thoughts. When I refused to be intimidated, the harassment escalated, vandalism, threats, constant surveillance. And then when none of that worked, Tyler staged an incident and called his father to arrest me. She looked at Marcus, who still wouldn't meet her eyes. Officer Garrett, you dragged me out of school in handcuffs in front of hundreds of students. You twisted my wrists until they bled. You denied me my constitutional rights. You threatened me and my mother. And then when we refused to back down, you burned our garage to the ground. The courtroom was absolutely silent. You thought you could break me. You thought that if you scared me enough, threatened me enough, hurt me enough, I would give up and go away. Zara's voice grew stronger. But you were wrong, because I am not alone. I have a mother who taught me that truth matters. I have friends who found the courage to stand beside me. I have a community that finally woke up and said enough. She turned to William. Former Sheriff Garrett, you built an empire of corruption in this county. You believed that your badge made you untouchable, that your connections made you invincible, that your family name put you above the law. She shook her head slowly. But the law doesn't work that way. Justice doesn't work that way. Eventually, the truth always comes out. And when it does, no amount of power or money or threats can put it back in the box. She looked at both men one final time. You tried to destroy me. Instead, you destroyed yourselves. And I hope that every night for the rest of your lives, you think about the people you hurt, and the opportunities you stole, and the lives you ruined. Because I promise you, we will never forget. She stepped away from the podium and returned to her seat. Mia grabbed her hand and squeezed tight. Marcus Chen was crying openly. Even some of the reporters had tears in their eyes. Judge Hammond waited for the emotion in the room to settle before speaking. I have presided over many cases in my 30 years on the bench, but I have never seen a more clear-cut example of systematic abuse of power than what has been presented in this courtroom. She looked at Marcus. Marcus Garrett, you swore an oath to protect and serve the citizens of this community. Instead, you used your badge as a weapon. You terrorized innocent people. You framed suspects. You committed arson. You failed in every possible way to uphold the sacred trust that was placed in you. Marcus stared at the table in front of him. For the crimes of assault, civil rights violations, false imprisonment, evidence, tampering, conspiracy, and arson, I sentence you to 25 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for 15 years. A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Additionally, you are permanently barred from holding any law enforcement position in any jurisdiction. You are stripped of your pension and benefits, and you are ordered to pay restitution to all victims in the amount to be determined by the court. Marcus's attorney leaned over to whisper something, but Marcus didn't respond. He sat motionless, like a man who had already died inside. Hammond turned to William. William Garrett, you served as sheriff of this county for 30 years. During that time, you built a network of corruption that infected every level of local government. You bribed judges. You intimidated witnesses. You manufactured evidence. You destroyed innocent lives to protect your family's power. William finally looked up, his eyes blazing with defiance. You think you've won? His voice was a hoarse rasp. You think putting 2 old men in prison changes anything? The system is bigger than us. It will survive us. It will. Mr. Garrett, you will be silent. I will not be silent. I built this county. I made it what it is. And you, all of you, you're nothing but... Bailiff, restrain the defendant. 2 officers moved toward William, but he was still shouting as they grabbed his arms. This isn't justice. This is revenge. You'll see. When my friends find out what you've done. William Edward Garrett. Hammond's voice cut through his tirade like a knife. For your crimes, which span 3 decades, and include obstruction of justice, conspiracy, witness, intimidation, evidence tampering, and accessory to multiple felonies. I sentence you to 35 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole." William stopped struggling. His face went slack. "Given your age, this is effectively a life sentence. You will die in prison, Mr. Garrett. And given the suffering you have caused to so many people over so many years, I consider that entirely appropriate." She struck her gavel. "This court is adjourned." The courtroom exploded into chaos. Reporters shouted questions. Victims embraced each other. The bailiffs dragged William away as he continued to scream about his connections and his friends and how everyone would be sorry. Zara sat still amid the commotion, processing what had just happened. It was over. The Garretts would spend the rest of their lives in prison. Tyler, who had been tried separately in juvenile court, had been sentenced to a residential rehabilitation facility until he turned 21. The network of corrupt officials William had built was being dismantled piece by piece. Justice had been served. Victoria pushed through the crowd and pulled Zara into a fierce hug. "I'm so proud of you, baby. So incredibly proud." "We did it, Mom. We actually did it." "No." Victoria pulled back and looked at her daughter with shining eyes. "You did it. You started this. You refused to be broken. Everything that happened today, every sentence, every conviction, every victim who finally got closure, it's because of you." Mia and Marcus Chen joined them, forming a tight circle of survivors. "What happens now?" Mia asked. Zara thought about the question. For 6 months, her entire life had been focused on this case. The hearings, the testimonies, the media appearances, the endless preparation for this day. And now, it was over. "Now," she said slowly, "we heal. We move forward. We build something better." Outside the courthouse, a crowd had gathered. Not just reporters, but regular people, students, parents, community members who had followed the case. They held signs that read, "Justice for Zara," and "Truth wins," and "Thank you for fighting." When Zara emerged, they burst into applause. She stopped on the steps, overwhelmed. These people had been strangers 6 months ago. Now they were allies, supporters. A community united by the simple belief that truth matters more than power. A young girl, maybe 10 or 11, pushed through the crowd. She was holding a handmade sign that said "My Hero," with Zara's name surrounded by hearts. "Excuse me," the girl said shyly. "Can I get a picture with you?" Zara knelt down to her level. "Of course. What's your name?" "Maya. Like you, but spelled different." "That's a beautiful name." The girl's mother snapped a photo, tears in her eyes. "I want to be like you when I grow up," Maya said. "I want to be brave like you." Zara felt her heart squeeze tight. "You know what? You don't have to wait until you grow up. You can be brave right now. Every time you stand up for yourself or for someone else, every time you tell the truth, even when it's hard, that's brave." Maya nodded solemnly, like she was receiving sacred wisdom. After the girl left, Victoria appeared at Zara's side. "Ready to go home?" "Almost. There's something I need to do first." She walked through the crowd, accepting handshakes and hugs, until she found who she was looking for. Officer Devin Turner stood at the edge of the gathering, wearing civilian clothes. He had resigned from the Westbrook Police Department 3 months ago, unable to work alongside colleagues who had protected the Garretts for so long. "Officer Turner." "It's just Devin now." He smiled sadly. "No more badge. I wanted to thank you. For the footage. For testifying. For everything." "I should be thanking you." Devin shook his head. "I knew what was happening for years. I saw the corruption, the abuse, the cover-ups. And I did nothing. I was too scared to speak up. But when it mattered, you did. Only because you showed me it was possible." He met her eyes. You're 17 years old, Zara. You took on a system that had been crushing people for decades, and you won. That's something I'll never forget. What are you going to do now? I've applied to the State Police Academy. I want to start over. Do it right this time. He paused. There are good cops out there, Zara. People who actually believe in protecting and serving. I want to be one of them. You already are. They shook hands, and Devon disappeared into the crowd. Zara found her mother waiting by the car. Everything okay? Everything's perfect. They drove home in comfortable silence, the radio playing softly in the background. The news was already reporting the sentences: breaking corrupt cop and former sheriff sentenced to decades in prison. When they pulled into their driveway, Zara noticed something different. The garage had been rebuilt. Fresh paint, new door, clean concrete. The hateful words that had been spray-painted there 6 months ago were gone, erased as completely as the Garrett family's power. When did you finish it? Zara asked. This morning. I wanted to surprise you. Victoria smiled. New beginning, baby, for all of us. That night, Zara sat at her desk staring at a blank document on her laptop. She had been invited to write an essay for the New York Times opinion section, a first-person account of her experience standing up to the Garrett family. The editor had called it an inspiring story of courage and perseverance that our readers need to hear. But every time she tried to start writing, the words wouldn't come. How could she possibly capture everything that had happened? The fear, the anger, the moments of doubt when she had wanted to give up, the support from friends and strangers, the overwhelming relief when justice was finally served. Her phone buzzed, a text from Mia. You okay? You seemed quiet after the courthouse. Zara typed back, just processing. It's weird. I've been fighting for so long I don't know how to stop. You don't have to stop. You just have to find something new to fight for. Zara stared at the message for a long moment. Something new to fight for. She thought about all the people who had reached out over the past 6 months. Students being bullied who didn't know where to turn. Parents fighting corrupt school administrators. Victims of police misconduct who had given up hope of ever being heard. She thought about Maya, the little girl with the handmade sign who wanted to be brave. She thought about Marcus Chen, who had lost everything because he bumped into the wrong person in a gym. She thought about Officer Devon Turner, who wanted to start over and do it right. An idea began to form. She opened a new email and started typing. Dear Richard, I've been thinking about what comes next. All these people who have contacted me sharing their stories, asking for help, there has to be something we can do for them. What would it take to start a foundation? Something focused on supporting victims of police misconduct and institutional abuse. Legal resources, advocacy, education. A way to turn what happened to me into something that helps others. Let me know what you think. Zara. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. Then she turned back to the blank document and began to write. My name is Zara Mitchell. 6 months ago, I was a 17-year-old girl starting at a new school. Today, I'm standing on the other side of a battle that changed my life and hopefully changed my community. This is the story of what happens when you refuse to be silent. The words flowed easily after that. She wrote about Tyler's harassment, about the arrest, about the fire, about the long months of fighting through a system designed to protect the powerful. But mostly, she wrote about the people who had stood beside her. Her mother, who had never wavered in her support. Mia, who had risked her own safety to be an ally. Marcus Chen, who had found the courage to testify despite everything he had suffered. Officer Turner, who had chosen conscience over career. Richard and his team, who had worked tirelessly to build the case. I didn't win this fight alone, she wrote. Nobody ever does. Change happens when ordinary people come together and decide that enough is enough. When they refuse to accept abuse as normal. When they believe that truth matters more than power. She paused, considering her next words carefully. To anyone reading this who is facing a similar situation, who is being bullied or harassed or abused by someone who seems untouchable, I want you to know that you are not alone. Your voice matters. Your story matters. And the people who are hurting you, they are not as powerful as they want you to believe. Document everything. Find allies. Speak your truth. And never ever let fear silence you. The system may be broken, but it can be fixed. I know because I've seen it happen. I've seen corrupt cops go to prison. I've seen untouchable bullies face consequences. I've seen an entire community wake up and say this ends now. If it can happen in Westbrook, it can happen anywhere. All it takes is one person brave enough to start. She finished writing just as the sun began to rise. The essay was published the following week. Within days, it had been read by millions of people. Comments poured in from around the world, stories of hope, of solidarity, of people finding their own courage. 2 weeks later, Richard called with news. The foundation is a go. I've found donors, board members, everything we need to get started. We're calling it the Mitchell Foundation for Justice. Zara felt tears spring to her eyes. That's amazing. It gets better. The governor's office reached out. They want you to speak at the state legislative session about police reform. They're drafting new accountability measures based on your case. Me speak to the legislature. You've become a symbol, Zara, a symbol of what's possible when people stand up for what's right. Richard paused. You can say no if you want. You've already done more than anyone could have asked. Zara thought about Maya, the little girl who wanted to be brave. She thought about all the messages she had received from people who were still fighting their own battles. She thought about the foundation that would bear her family's name, helping victims who had no one else to turn to. I'll do it. 3 weeks later, Zara stood at a podium in the Georgia state capitol, facing an audience of legislators, journalists, and citizens. Her mother sat in the front row, beaming with pride. Mia was beside her, recording everything on her phone. Marcus Chen had flown in again. Officer Devin Turner sat near the back, wearing his new state police uniform. My name is Zara Mitchell. She began, her voice clear and strong. 1 year ago, I was a high school student who just wanted to go to class without being terrorized. Today I'm standing here because I refuse to accept that some people are above the law. She told her story one more time. But this time she wasn't just speaking for herself. She was speaking for every victim who had ever been silenced, every witness who had been intimidated, every person who had given up hope of ever being heard. The Garrett family believed they were untouchable, she said. They believed their badges and their connections and their money made them immune to consequences. They were wrong. She looked around the chamber. But my story is not unique. Across this state, across this country, there are others like the Garretts. People who abuse their power because they know the system will protect them. People who destroy lives because no one has ever held them accountable. She gripped the podium. That has to change, and it can change. Not with one case or one foundation or one speech, but with sustained effort, with new laws and better oversight and citizens who refuse to look the other way. She took a deep breath. I'm 17 years old. I shouldn't be standing here. It shouldn't take a teenager documenting her own harassment on a cell phone to expose decades of corruption. Our institutions should protect us. Our leaders should protect us. The people with badges and power should protect us. Her voice rose. But when they fail, and they will fail because systems are made of imperfect people, we have to be ready. We have to document. We have to organize. We have to speak truth to power, even when our voices shake. She paused, letting her words settle over the chamber. I didn't choose this fight. Tyler Garrett chose it for me the moment he decided that I needed to know my place. But once the fight came to me, I chose not to run. I chose to stand. I chose to speak. I chose to believe that the truth is more powerful than any badge or threat or burning building. She looked directly at the cameras. And I was right. The chamber erupted in applause. Later that evening, after the speeches and the interviews and the congratulations, Zara stood alone on the Capitol steps, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Victoria found her there. Quite a day. Quite a year. They stood together in comfortable silence, mother and daughter watching the day end. "What are you thinking about?" Victoria asked. "I'm thinking about the garage, about the night it burned." Zara paused. "They thought fire would destroy us. They thought if they scared us enough, we would give up. But we didn't. No, we didn't." Zara turned to face her mother. "Because the truth doesn't burn. Evidence burns. Buildings burn. But the truth, it survives everything. It waits. And eventually, it comes out." Victoria pulled her daughter into a hug. "I love you so much, baby." "I love you too, Mom." They held each other as the last light faded from the sky. Somewhere in Georgia, Marcus Garrett was beginning his first night in federal prison. Somewhere else, William Garrett was staring at the walls of his cell, finally understanding that his empire was gone forever. And somewhere in Westbrook, a new girl was starting at the high school. She was nervous. She didn't know anyone. She was afraid of not fitting in. But as she walked down the hallway, she passed a small memorial that had been installed near the main entrance. A plaque with Zara Mitchell's name, commemorating her courage and her sacrifice. The new girl stopped to read it, and she stood a little taller. Because now she knew that if someone tried to push her down, she didn't have to accept it. She could fight back. She could speak up. She could be brave. One person had shown an entire community what was possible, and that lesson would echo for generations. Zara Mitchell had walked into Westbrook High School as a scared new girl with no idea what awaited her. She had faced hatred and violence and threats that would have broken most adults. She had been arrested, humiliated, and targeted for destruction. But she had refused to be silenced, and in the end, her voice had changed everything. The Garrett family was gone. The corruption they had built was dismantled. A foundation bore her name, helping victims across the country find the support they needed to fight their own battles. And most importantly, the truth was finally free. It had taken courage. It had taken sacrifice. It had taken a willingness to stand alone against impossible odds. But Zara had never truly been alone. Her mother had been beside her. Her friends had supported her. An entire community had eventually rallied to her cause. That was the real lesson, the one she carried with her as she walked back to the car with her mother. Justice isn't something that happens to us. It's something we create together, one act of courage at a time. And it starts with a single word. No. No, I will not be silent. No, I will not back down. No, I will not let fear control me. Zara Mitchell had said that word on her first day at Westbrook High when Tyler Garrett tried to put her in her place. And she had never stopped saying it, because the truth doesn't burn. And neither did she.